All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're going to decode the hard data behind what is absolutely the most consequential geopolitical shift of our time, the shifting dynamic between the United States and China. For decades, the global hierarchy felt, basically locked in place. But recent events, they've shown us that the foundations of that hierarchy are moving incredibly fast. So we're going to completely strip away the political rhetoric, look strictly at the numbers, and figure out exactly where the balance of power stands today. So is America surrendering its global crown? We've really got to start with this provocative question, especially after that recent high-stakes meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping over in Beijing. And what made this meeting so totally fascinating wasn't just seeing those two leaders in the same room. It was the entourage. The US president actually brought along 12 top American CEOs. We're talking heavyweights like Elon Musk, Tim Cook, and NVIDIA's Jensen Huang. Think about that for a second. When the world's most powerful capitalist nation brings its absolute top billionaires to the negotiating table with the world's most powerful communist leader, well, it signals a massive shift in who actually holds the leverage in the global economy right now. Okay, here's the quick roadmap for our explainer today. We're going to cover the Beijing Power Summit, the technology and AI race, military might and modernization, the rare earth chokehold, alliances and global diplomacy, and finally, we'll look at who truly wears the crown. We're just separating the optics from the reality using the hard facts. Section 1, the Beijing Power Summit. Let's look at the optics versus the reality. Setting the scene behind those closed doors, there's a massive contrast in the optics. You've got the world's two most powerful leaders meeting face-to-face after a 6-month gap, and there's this, frankly, unprecedented level of praise coming from the US side. But step outside the optics of those handshakes for a minute. If you look at the narrative being pushed by Chinese state media, it's very different. They aren't just talking about a successful meeting. They're actively signaling a century of change. They're projecting a very real position of strength, fully aware that the US economy relies heavily on Chinese manufacturing. Moving right along to Section 2, the technology and AI race. We're talking patents and pure innovation. For the longest time, a lot of people just perceived China as a hub for cheap copycats rather than a place for genuine innovation. Well, the data completely shatters that myth. 5.32 million. That is the number of valid invention patents held by China. They are literally the first nation in the world to cross the 5 million mark. And these aren't just, frivolous little filings. 60% of these are heavily focused on strategic emerging industries. We're talking green tech, robotics, artificial intelligence. This isn't just some abstract data point. It means the next generation of smart tech, green energy, and life-saving robotics that you'll use in your daily life could very well be designed and controlled entirely by Chinese firms. And the most crucial battleground right now? AI for sure. China currently holds a staggering 60% of all global AI patents. They've got over 6,200 core AI companies, sitting on an industry valuation of over $75 billion. Plus, they boast over 600 million generative AI users. To put that into perspective, that's more than the entire population of the United States. We've even seen major breakthroughs like the startup DeepSeek, launching highly efficient AI models that rival ChatGPT. It just proves their edge in emerging tech is incredibly sharp, and that is going to dictate who controls the digital infrastructure of our future. Now, when you map out the broader tech war, it's like a massive, complex puzzle. The US definitively holds the advantage in advanced semiconductor design, mostly thanks to the NVIDIA and TSMC ecosystem. But China isn't just sitting still. They're pouring over $1 trillion annually into R&D to close that gap. Meanwhile, they have distinct advantages elsewhere. They've launched the Zhuzhong 504, which is one of the most powerful quantum supercomputers on Earth. They've hit satellite-to-ground data speeds of 100 gigabits per second, literally outpacing current Starlink speeds. And in robotics, a Chinese company named Unitree has become the world's largest maker of humanoid robots. So it's a neck-and-neck race across multiple frontiers. All right, Section 3, military might and modernization. Let's talk hardware and capabilities. For decades, China's military strategy was basically hide your strength and bide your time. Well, that era is totally over. Sure, on paper, America still commands military supremacy. The US has this massive global network of bases for immediate power projection, and its troops and hardware are heavily battle-tested from recent global conflicts. China, on the other hand, historically lacked that recent combat experience, but they are rapidly changing the equation. Over the last decade, they've become completely self-reliant in weapon systems. They're actively testing 6th-generation fighters right now, a technology that everyone thought was a total US monopoly, and they're proving their hardware's capabilities via proxies in theaters like Pakistan and Iran. And their rapid advancement was put on full, very public display during their massive 2025 military parade. We're talking about the DF-5C intercontinental ballistic missile with a 20,000-kilometer range. That's global reach. They rolled out the YJ-19 hypersonic anti-ship missile, massive 60-foot unmanned stealth submarines, and the G1111 Loyal Wingman, which is an AI-powered drone. This public flex proves that in specific, crucial categories like ground-based and hypersonic missiles, China is straight-up matching or even surpassing U.S. capabilities.
Section 4. The rare earth chokehold. This is all about supply chain vulnerabilities.
You know, a military isn't just about the hardware it currently has, it's about the ability to build more of it when things go south. Recent conflicts, specifically the US-Iran war, have heavily depleted American stockpiles of Patriot missiles, Tomahawks, and interceptors, and trying to rebuild them exposes a glaring structural weakness. 5,200 pounds. That is exactly how much rare earth material is required to build just a single U.S. naval destroyer. An F-35 stealth fighter? That needs 900 pounds. These minerals are the absolute lifeblood of advanced military technology, from AI chips to radars to missile systems. But here is the absolute catch-22 for the United States. China controls over 90% of the global processing for these critical rare earth minerals. So when the U.S. needs to rebuild those depleted missile stockpiles, it literally relies on Chinese processed materials to do it. This near-total monopoly gives Beijing the ultimate geopolitical leverage. They can simply limit supply and instantly cripple American manufacturing capabilities without ever firing a single shot. And hey, this directly impacts you, because if that supply chain snaps, it's not just the military that grinds to a halt. It's the production of the smartphone in your pocket or the battery in your electric car. The economic shockwaves would be felt in literally every household. Section 5. Alliances and global diplomacy. Friends and friction. Because geopolitics isn't solely about hardware, right? It's about who actually stands with you when the pressure mounts. Right now, the U.S. maintains this historic, unparalleled network of allies, NATO, Japan, South Korea. However, recent years have brought increasing friction and public disputes with traditional partners like the UK, Germany, and Canada. Conversely, China is playing a different game. They're using their massive economic weight, handling 30% of global manufacturing, to expand their footprint. Through their Belt and Road Initiative, they've built deep infrastructure and diplomatic ties across over 150 nations in the global south, and they're boldly defying U.S. sanctions. For instance, when the U.S. sanctioned Chinese companies for buying Iranian oil, Beijing basically invoked a domestic blocking rule, openly instructing its companies to completely ignore Washington. Which brings us to our final section, who wears the crown? Let's look at the economic trajectories and those high-stakes negotiations. Bringing all this data back to that closed-door meeting in Beijing reveals who actually holds the strongest bargaining chips today. Just look at the reported summit demands. It's a stark contrast. The U.S. approach was heavily focused on immediate, transactional economic relief. Asking China to buy more soybeans, purchase Boeing planes, and use its influence to pressure Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz. It's essentially asking for help with global policing. China, on the other hand, they're demanding long-term strategic geopolitical concessions, officially opposing Taiwan's independence, delaying arms transfers to Taiwan, and lifting U.S. export controls on critical semiconductors. One side is asking for economic favors, the other is demanding structural power shifts. And all of this culminates in one final economic reality check. Now, on paper, the U.S. still leads with a massive $30 trillion nominal GDP compared to China's $20 trillion. Plus, the U.S. has a vastly superior per capita wealth, $94,000 against China's $5,000. The U.S. dollar's dominance is still incredibly strong. But look at the growth trajectory. Even amidst a global slowdown, China's economy is growing at 5.5%, which is more than double the U.S. rate of 2.5%. And if we look at purchasing power parity, which measures real, tangible production and consumption, China actually overtook America a decade ago, sitting at a $40 trillion PPP GDP today. So I want to leave you with this final thought. Just 40 years ago, China was a poor developing country. Today, they hold monopolies in rare earths, they lead the world in AI patents, they drive global manufacturing, and they are matching top-tier military capabilities. The data strongly suggests that the true answer to who wears the global crown isn't just about who holds it right now, but who has the momentum to hold it tomorrow. If these current trajectories hold steady, what will the global balance of power look like in exactly 15 years? Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer. Keep analyzing the data, and we'll see you next time.